In the vibrant, jazz-soaked streets of New Orleans, a young girl named Tiana learned the most important lesson of her life from her father, James. While other children played with dolls, Tiana stood on a stool in their small kitchen, stirring a pot of gumbo that smelled of bay leaves and hope. Her father told her that food brings people from all walks of life together, and he dreamed of one day opening Tiana's Place, a restaurant where everyone would be welcome. Tiana took that dream into her heart, believing that if she worked hard enough, she could make it a reality. Years passed, and Tiana grew into a determined young woman. While her best friend, the wealthy and bubbly Charlotte LeBoeuf, spent her days dreaming of marrying a prince, Tiana worked 2 jobs, saving every nickel and dime. She was exhausted, her feet ached, and she rarely had time for fun, but she was close. She had finally found the perfect location, an old, abandoned sugar mill. She could almost see the white tablecloths and hear the sound of the trumpet. One evening, New Orleans was buzzing with excitement. Prince Naveen of Maldonia was arriving for the Mardi Gras season. Charlotte's father, Big Daddy LeBoeuf, was hosting a grand masquerade ball to welcome him. Charlotte hired Tiana to bake hundreds of her famous beignets for the party, offering her enough money to finally buy the mill. Tiana felt her dream was finally within reach. However, as she looked up at the evening star, she didn't realize that a dark shadow was stretching across the city, and her life was about to take a turn into the magical unknown of the Louisiana swamp. Prince Naveen was not the fairy tale prince everyone expected. He was charming and handsome, yes, but he was also lazy, vain, and completely penniless. His parents had cut off his allowance, and he had come to New Orleans with a plan to marry a rich Southern belle like Charlotte so he could continue his life of leisure. As he strolled through the French Quarter with his nervous valet, Lawrence, he was captivated by the music, but he was also being watched. Dr. Facilier, a charismatic but sinister voodoo practitioner known as the Shadow Man, saw the prince as his ticket to wealth and power. He lured Naveen and Lawrence into his dark, mask-filled parlor with promises of making their dreams come true. Facilier used his friends on the other side, dark, swirling spirits, to perform a ritual. But the Shadow Man's deals always had a price. He didn't want to help Naveen, he wanted to replace him. In a flash of purple smoke and neon green light, Naveen was transformed. He didn't become a richer man, he was turned into a small green frog. Meanwhile, using a magical talisman filled with a drop of the prince's blood, Facilier transformed the valet, Lawrence, into a physical double of Naveen. The plan was for Lawrence to marry Charlotte, gain her father's fortune, and then Facilier would rule the city from the shadows. The real Naveen, trapped in a jar, managed to escape into the night, hopping frantically toward the lights of the LeBoeuf estate, desperate for a way to break the curse.
Don't let him escape!
The LeBoeuf Masquerade Ball was a whirlwind of glitter, silk, and jazz. Tiana, dressed in a beautiful blue gown provided by Charlotte, felt like a princess for a moment. But her joy was shattered when the real estate agents told her she had been outbid for the sugar mill. Heartbroken and feeling like all her hard work had been for nothing, she stepped onto the balcony to find a quiet moment with the evening star. Suddenly, a frog hopped onto the railing. To Tiana's absolute shock, the frog spoke. It was Naveen, of course, who explained his royal identity and begged for a kiss to break the spell. Tiana was skeptical and more than a little disgusted. She wasn't a princess, she was a cook. But Naveen, a natural negotiator, promised that if she kissed him, he would use his royal family's wealth to buy her restaurant. Desperate to save her dream, Tiana closed her eyes, scrunched up her face, and leaned in. Mwah! There was a burst of magical energy, a whirlwind of sparkles, and a strange shrinking sensation. But when the smoke cleared, Naveen was still a frog, and Tiana was horrified to find that she had become one too. Because Tiana wasn't a real princess, the magic had backfired, pulling her into his world instead of pulling him into hers. Chased by Charlotte's dog Stella, the two frogs hitched a ride on a party balloon and were carried away from the city deep into the dark and mysterious Louisiana bayou. The bayou was a terrifying place for two city-dwelling frogs. The water was dark, the cypress trees looked like giants, and the sounds of the night were deafening. Tiana was furious. She had worked her whole life for success, and now she was an amphibian stuck in a swamp with a prince who didn't even know how to pour his own water. They bickered constantly, with Tiana calling him a spoiled brat and Naveen calling her stuck up. Their argument was interrupted by a massive pair of glowing eyes rising from the water. Out stepped Louie, a giant alligator. However, instead of eating them, Louie began to play a trumpet. It turned out Louie was a jazz-loving gator who desperately wanted to play with the big bands in New Orleans, but humans were always too scared of him. When he realized Naveen was a fellow musician, they became instant friends. Louie told them about Mama Odie, a 197-year-old blind priestess who lived deep in the swamp and could perform powerful magic. She was their only hope to become human again. Tiana, Naveen, and Louie formed an unlikely trio and began their trek through the reeds. Tiana realized that if she ever wanted her restaurant back, she was going to have to survive the wildest night of her life. As they traveled, Tiana's practical skills kept them safe, while Naveen's charm began to soften, making him realize that perhaps there was more to life than just having money. As the trio pushed deeper into the swamp, they met a tiny, glowing firefly named Ray. Ray was a romantic soul with a thick Cajun accent and a heart of gold. He was madly in love with Evangeline, whom he pointed out as the brightest star in the sky. Tiana knew the star was actually the planet Venus, but Ray's devotion was so beautiful she didn't have the heart to tell him. Ray joined the group, offering his glowing light to lead the way through the fog. That night, as they rested on a log, Naveen watched Tiana work. She was using a sharp leaf to mince mushrooms and a hollow reed to cook a swamp gumbo. He had never seen anyone so capable or dedicated. For the first time, Naveen felt a sense of responsibility. He offered to help, and Tiana taught him how to mince the vegetables. Under the starlight, they danced a small, froggy waltz to the sound of Ray's buzzing song. However, the Shadow Man's influence reached even the deep bayou. Dr. Facilier, realizing he needed the real Naveen to keep the transformation talisman working, sent out shadow demons to capture the Frog Prince. These dark spirits darted through the trees like ink and water, snapping at the group. Thanks to Louie's strength and Ray's quick flying, they managed to fight them off and escape, but the encounter left them shaken. They realized that time was running out. If they didn't find Mama Odie soon, the Shadow Man's dark magic would claim them forever. Finally, the group reached a strange house perched high in a tree, an old shrimp boat caught in a giant cypress. This was the home of Mama Odie and her pet snake, Juju. Mama Odie wasn't the scary witch they expected. She was a joyful, eccentric woman who saw right through their green skin. She didn't just give them a spell, she gave them a lesson. She sang to them about the importance of digging a little deeper. She explained that Naveen didn't know what he needed, only what he wanted. He wanted wealth, but he needed love and a sense of purpose. Tiana wanted her restaurant, but she needed to realize that life was about more than just work. It was about the people you share it with. Through a magical vision in her gumbo pot, Mama Odie showed them the solution. To break the spell, Naveen had to kiss a princess before the clock struck midnight on Mardi Gras. Since Charlotte's father was the king of the Mardi Gras parade, Charlotte was technically a princess for the day. If Naveen could kiss her before the parade ended, they would both become human. Naveen realized he was falling in love with Tiana and was willing to stay a frog forever if it meant being with her. But Tiana, still focused on her father's dream, urged them to hurry back to the city. They hitched a ride on a riverboat, racing against the clock as the sun began to set on the final day of the festival. Back in New Orleans, the Mardi Gras parade was an explosion of color and music. The fake Prince Naveen, Lawrence, was standing on a massive float next to Charlotte, ready to marry her so Facilier could steal the fortune. The real Naveen tried to reach the float, but he was captured by Facilier's shadows and brought to the Shadow Man's lair. Tiana, searching for Naveen, found herself cornered by Facilier. He used his magic to show her a vision of her dream restaurant, Tiana's Place, filled with happy people and her father, James. "I can make this real, Tiana," he hissed. "All you have to do is give me the talisman." He offered her a life of luxury and the fulfillment of her father's dream in exchange for Naveen's soul. Tiana looked at the beautiful restaurant, but then she thought of her father's real legacy, love. She realized that dreams aren't built on deals with shadows, but on love and hard work. With a brave leap, Tiana grabbed the talisman and smashed it on the ground. The friends on the other side were furious. Because Facilier could not pay his debt, the shadows turned on him, dragging him away into their realm forever. The fake prince turned back into Lawrence, and the magic faded. But there was a problem. The clock struck midnight. The parade was over, and Charlotte was no longer a princess. Tiana and Naveen were still frogs, and it seemed they would be forever.
Tiana! You were magnificent!
The clock. It struck midnight.
Tiana and Naveen stood on a lily pad in the quiet swamp, reconciled to their fate. They had lost their chance to be human, but they had found each other. Ray, who had been injured in the final battle, passed away peacefully. As his light ascended to the sky, a new star appeared right next to Evangeline. It was a bittersweet moment, but the two frogs knew they wanted to spend their lives together, no matter what they looked like. They returned to Mama Odie's treehouse and asked her to marry them. As they shared their wedding kiss as two frogs, something miraculous happened. A massive explosion of light and swirling magic surrounded them, lifting them into the air. When the light faded, they were standing on two legs again. Human! Mama Odie cackled with joy. "I told you! When Naveen married Tiana, she became a real princess." By marrying a prince, Tiana had gained the royal status required to break the spell. With Naveen's help and the money they had saved, Tiana finally bought the sugar mill. They worked together, Naveen playing the jazz music and Tiana running the finest kitchen in the South. Tiana's palace became the heart of New Orleans, where everyone was welcome. Louis finally got to play his trumpet in the house band, and Charlotte remained Tiana's best friend. Tiana had achieved her dream, but she realized her father was right. Love was the most important ingredient of all. And every night, two stars shone brightly over the bayou, watching over the city where dreams really do come true.